Welcome to Lesson 1.2, Library Cache Internals. We're going to talk a little bit about what happens when you submit a SQL statement to Oracle. You got your applications out here running in client-server mode, perhaps, workstations of various kinds, could be a tablet, PC, whatever. They all have what's called SQLnet, which is Oracle's communication channel. And this could actually be a web server and you're talking to a web server, but when you connect to Oracle, you get a background process. And this background process is tasked with doing all of your work. You also get a program global area, okay? And in this program global area are several things, including a cursor area. Each SQL statement gets its own cursor area. This is where the rows that come back, the output from your SQL statements, this is where they come back and your application is then notified that there's some rows coming back. From here, what is the SQL that's going? Is it PL SQL or is it SQL? If it's PL SQL, Oracle, the database, starts processing your PL SQL. When it hits a SQL statement, tosses it over the fence to the SQL engine. If your application has submitted just a SQL statement, it goes through the SQL engine. The next thing that happens is Oracle does a checksum on that SQL statement. It uses this checksum as a reference point to find it in the library cache. The library cache is nothing but a great big hash table, okay? Hashing is when you take some math, apply it to your key information, and it comes up with a unique location. These hash tables are just memory structures with unique locations. And the library cache is just a great big one of these. What it happens to store are your SQL statements and some useful information for executing your SQL statements. What Oracle is after is to be able to reuse any SQL statement it has already hard parsed. Okay, we've got two new terms here, hard parsing and soft parsing. Soft parsing is when Oracle uses that checksum, it hashes that checksum, looks in the library cache to see if it's already seen this SQL statement. If it has, it already has an explain plan, it's ready to execute. When it executes your SQL statement, now Oracle is interested in are the blocks, the data that holds the information from the Oracle database that has our information in it, are they already in memory? If they're already in memory, this is a logical read, otherwise it's a physical read. And this explain plan has the path for getting this data, processing the tables, processing the indexes, and the order in which to do all these things in. That's a soft parse. Soft parse is, again, when Oracle has found your SQL statement in the library cache, it has already done a hard parse on it, and it's already ready to execute. When Oracle executes, it processes your SQL statement, it comes up with this row set that we're going to talk about in the remaining lessons coming up. When it's done processing, it returns those rows to the cursor area. Your application is then notified that you've got some rows back. And this kind of comes down to the fraternity hazing, perhaps, with the paddle of you have some rows back. And then your application will ask, please give me some rows. And then how many rows did you ask for? This is going to be the point of conversation for some of the PL SQL courses that I'm going to be doing. Watch for those in the Pearson library. And what you don't want to do if you have a lot of rows coming back is this row-to-time processing. It shows up very well in the Oracle database, but it is a programming change. So what you really want to ask for if you've got a lot of rows coming back is 100 rows at a time or 500 rows at a time so that Oracle makes less round trips. Remember our original slide on DB time? The round trips over the network through the web server, you want to make as few of those as possible when processing large amounts of data. So that's what happens on a soft parse and when Oracle executes. It processes your SQL statement based on the explain plan content in the order of things laid out in the explain plan and returns your data. A hard parse is when Oracle comes up here and looks in the library cache and your SQL statement is not there, or there is no execution plan associated with it. And there's a couple of reasons for this. When Oracle hard parses, this is when it uses statistics, making educated guesses and arriving at the explain plan. So Oracle hard parsing is when it doesn't have an explain plan or the SQL is not in the library cache and it has to come up with that explain plan. That's what the process is called. A soft parse is when your SQL statement is already in the library cache and there is an explain plan for it, and Oracle can just go ahead and execute.